Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm paying tribute to director Ralph Senensky, who sadly passed away just recently at the age of 102. Ralph was born May 1st, 1923 in Mason City, Iowa, and he attended the Pasadena Playhouse once he came to Hollywood and got started as a typist in CBS Radio's mimeograph department in the early 1950s. I've drawn from a number of different sources, including IMDb, which said he made his foray into the world of episodic television in 1958 as a production supervisor and production coordinator in 4 episodes of the anthology drama series Playhouse 90. And he worked as a stage director before directing for television. Then segueing into his role as a TV director with 5 episodes of the medical drama Dr. Kildare, starring Richard Chamberlain in 1961. He honed his early directing chops in 1960s dramas like Checkmate, 12 O'Clock High, The Big Valley, Mission Impossible, Ironside, and Mannix. Over the years, Ralph wrote in a blog called Ralph's Trek, Ralph's Cinema Trek. It's on Senensky.com. And he opens this blog by saying, "Welcome to my website. Through the many years I have amused, I think, many people telling of my adventures in film and television. So I thought I would amuse even more people by blogging those tales, which I did on September 2nd, 2009, when I launched my blog site, Ralph's Trek, at ralphsenenskyblogspot.com. As promised, they weren't sequential. I added postings as time and memory permitted. It was very unconstructed, unlike the conditions under which most of the adventures occurred. But now as I look at the 71 productions I have discussed so far, I have an urge to be a little more sequential, to bring a little order to the disorder. So if you're interested, how about hopping aboard, pull up a chair beside me at the Moviola as I take you onto the sets where all of this occurred. Here we go, let's blast off." And then in his blog, you can look up the various different shows that he worked on, and then he goes through the different episodes that he directed, and he includes the video of those. So he'll show a portion of the show, and he'll either talk about it before or after, but it allows you to see what he's talking about. So it's very special. If you haven't looked at his blog, I highly recommend it. I came across an early article about Ralph from somewhere in Mason City. I couldn't tell what the actual publication was, but it says it's titled Ralph Senensky Directing Little Theater Production. And there's this wonderful shot of him. It looks like it was probably when he was in high school or college. And it says, "Directing technique acquired at the Pasadena Playhouse will be put to use by the Mason City Little Theater in its coming production of The Glass Menagerie, which is being directed by Ralph Senensky and will be presented January 26th and 27th in the high school auditorium. Mr. Senensky was graduated from the Pasadena Playhouse last June, receiving the degree of Bachelor of Theater Arts with a major in directing. His most recent little theater effort was in the play State of the Union, in which his portrayal of the press agent won considerable commendation. While he was in high school here, he had the title role in the little theater presentation of Huckleberry Finn. Mr. Senensky is a graduate of Mason City High School and Junior College and worked in dramatics while in school here. He attended college before going to Pasadena." Another article I came across was from the Globe Gazette, and this was written by Deb Nicklay, and I believe this is also in Mason City. So it says, "Ralph Senensky tried out for his first theater play 50 years ago at Mason City High School. The play was Seven Sisters. I wasn't cast, but I wanted to be involved," he said, "so I became an assistant to the director, Miss Myrtle Ullman. It was Senensky's first taste of the stage, and it quickly developed into his life's passion. After a stint as director of theater in Mason City and Des Moines, he moved to California to earn fame as the director of more than 150 TV shows, including Star Trek, not his favorite, The Waltons, and Dynasty. Senensky, 78, and 5 others were in town Sunday to receive the 2001 Distinguished Alumni Award from MCHS. They were recognized during a banquet at the Music Man Square. Senensky paid tribute to local schools for shaping a career of a lifetime. Standing here tonight, I look back at that 17-year-old and I can't think of a less likely candidate than me for having done what I've done, he said. He credited Ullman, his first teacher, for being his best. She just opened the door, he said. My career has been exciting and exhilarating. Everything I have done since then is hung on the style she taught. And he has done much. After serving a stint as production supervisor for such early live shows as Playhouse 90, he served as a freelance director of an array of TV shows over the past 40 years. His favorite work came on episodes of The Paper Chase and The Waltons. They were shows about real people, about family, he said. He said Ullman's instruction was invaluable. It was very precise, very traditional direction that keeps the director out of the way of the production, Senensky said. We need more of that today. Today's directors don't keep themselves away. In fact, they're taught not to. They're taught that everything is about the film, nothing is about the actors. He recalled directing one Waltons episode with legendary character actress Beulah Bondi, an effort that later earned the late actress an Emmy and Senensky a good friend. He said he counts Bondi, who he said is known by too few of the present generation, among the best actresses of the age. He does not have the same affection for TV today. The man who directed such noted shows as The Fugitive, The Naked City, Route 66, and Mission Impossible said he couldn't care less about today's channel offerings. I never watched TV, he said. There is nothing to watch. I don't like the material. I don't like the gimmicks. We need to get back to shows about people and about values. Although retired from TV, his work is still being appreciated. Two teens sought his autograph Sunday evening. They said they enjoy the TV shows now seen on classic channels. Thank you so much for your work, said Erica Ekberg. You did such wonderful shows. Senensky was enticed to return to theater direction recently after a 13-year absence. He directed The Accomplice at a Carmel, California theater and enjoyed it so much that he plans to do more. I wasn't sure about doing it, but it turned out very well. The old warhorse, Senensky said with a grin, hasn't forgotten. I came across another fun quote of Ralph's about directing episodic television. Directing episodic television is like jumping on a freight train in motion, Ralph Senensky once said. As a director, you have to jump on and not break your legs. Once you've boarded it, you must climb on top of the train and run across, get into the engine, and take over running it. Much of what happens is that before you can bring anything personal to a story, which you have to do, you have to get acquainted with who the people are. That's not in terms of who you want them to be, but who they already are, because you catch them as ongoing, already established characters. You do that, and then you can start to find the warts and different things to do, finding outlets and ways that you can extend and expand, he added. What I remember about Ralph is that he had a unique style. He was extremely organized and prepared for every shoot. He was fast, efficient, and always came in on time or ahead of time when it came to filming The Waltons. In segments where he joined me on my YouTube channel, we often spoke about his approach to directing actors and how to get the best performance out of them. And he shared many of his detailed stories about the various different episodes of not only The Waltons, but along his career, and that included shows like the original Star Trek, the original Twilight Zone, Route 66, Naked City, Dr. Kildare, 12 O'Clock High, The Fugitive, The Big Valley, The Wild Wild West, Mission Impossible, Mannix, Ironside, The Courtship of Eddie's Father, Nanny and the Professor, The Partridge Family, Night Gallery, The FBI, Barnaby Jones, Eight is Enough, Trapper John M.D., Lou Grant, Dynasty, Heart to Heart, and The Paper Chase. And that is just a selection of the many, many shows he directed. Plus, he did some of the most iconic episodes of The Waltons, such as The Pony Cart that was mentioned, that he directed Beulah Bondi, for which she won an Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actress in an episode of a series. And he also directed The Firestorm, which I thought was a tremendously intense, important episode about what was happening with the Nazis burning books in Germany. And really showcased John Ritter and Richard Thomas and Nora Marlowe as Mrs. Brimmer in that big scene around the fire when they were going to burn the books. He directed The Grandchild, which of course featured me, and the very, very beloved episode, Grandma Comes Home, that brought Ellen Corby back after her stroke and reunited Esther and Zeb one last time before we lost Will Geer. I asked him about the difference between directing drama and comedy and drama shows or family shows, and he spent a lot of time talking to me about things like that and explaining his perspective on it. And those were things that we covered in some of the segments that I did with him. He was always willing to share his knowledge with other people and how he approached things. And a couple of months ago, he had reached out to me. He said, we need to talk. And I was like, oh, shoot, what have I done? And all he said was, we should get together. And so I was able to go to his house and spend an afternoon with him where he talked about the history of television and how he feels that so many people today don't know the history of television and things that he lived and things he talks about in his blog, Senensky.com. And just he had some other stories he wanted to share and wanted to see about me getting those on video. And I appreciated that he really appreciated what I was doing with this channel in sort of documenting all these stories about the Waltons and about the cast members I've been able to have as guests. And I loved having him as a guest and letting him share his experiences and everything he remembered about the episodes of the Waltons that he filmed and other shows that he filmed. Once we'd kind of covered a lot of stuff about the Waltons, I said, what else? Tell me about Star Trek. Tell me about, he told me about early episodes of Route 66 and some of his early things. And there were a couple of other stories he really wanted to share. And so we were able to schedule that just a little over a month ago. We did one last segment, Zoom call, where he covered two different stories he really wanted to share. I have not yet had a chance to make those public on my YouTube, but they will be coming very soon. And I look forward to being able to share what basically will be the last live interviews, last interviews that were recorded with Ralph. And it was a great pleasure and a great honor to get to know him as an adult. And because when we were filming, I knew him as a director, and it was a very different time in my life, and it was a different time in his life. And now in these later years of his life, getting to reconnect with him and having him share all this information and knowledge and experience has just been, such a blessing. I also spoke recently, just today actually, with John Dayton, and because I had reached out to him because John was the one that actually reconnected me with Ralph, and they have stayed friends over the years. And so the first segments I did with Ralph were John and Ralph for that reason. And then it went on from there. But so I reached out to John and said, John, are there things you'd like to share, memories or thoughts or stories about Ralph? And he reached back out to me today and said, yes, he would love to do a segment with me about Ralph. So I'm going to be recording that very soon. And so I'll also have another opportunity to share some of my thoughts and hear what John Dayton would like to share about his lifelong friend, Ralph Senensky. I hope that you will also, in tribute to Ralph, take an opportunity to perhaps look back at the segments that he has done with me over the last couple of years here on my YouTube channel. If you just search the channel for Ralph Senensky, there's probably 9 or 10 segments. Some we did with John Dayton, and then several I did just with Ralph. And then please keep an eye out for these last 2 segments of him that will be coming in the next probably couple of weeks. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me and letting me share a little bit about Ralph. And I hope you've enjoyed getting a chance to know the man behind all of these wonderful episodes of some of the best television in history. Thank you for joining me for this special segment as a tribute to director Ralph Senensky. Thanks for watching.